show y'all motherfuckers, man, this shit is not a love song. This a fucking stripper on a mid club song. This a fucking boys forever hold a grudge song. Pop some fucking champagne in the tub song. Nigga, just because song. What's the move?
Hello. Whoa. If you enjoyed that intro sequence, then congrats, you made it to the right place. Today, I'm going to be teaching you how to do hyperlapses. If you don't know, a hyperlapse is basically a moving time lapse, and it has been a style of filmmaking, and it has been in tons of travel videos over the past few years. There are tons of creators who have made their own spin on this and made it so popular, but today I'm going to run you through the basics of how to do this. Once I figured out how to do this, I realized that holy shit, my videos are going to be so much better, because although it is a very painstakingly long process, it is actually relatively easy. And once you learn how to do it, it is so easy to replicate that you're going to be able to take your videos to a whole nother level. But first off, if you're new around here, welcome. My name is Nicolas Chae. I'm a photographer and filmmaker. I know I don't do a ton of tutorials, but if you enjoy it, make sure to drop a subscribe down below. And yeah, let's just jump right into it. So first off, before you even get into the editing process, 85% of this happens in camera. And the problem is, if you don't do it well in camera, then it's not something that you can easily fix in post, and it's not going to look good. But first off, I need to explain how a time lapse works so that you understand the concept behind it and you're able to implement on your own. Essentially, your camera is going to take a sequence of photos that are eventually going to be turned into one final sequence that makes it look like things are moving. This is a great technique utilized to show motion or time passing. You see it in tons of movies and TV shows where you can time lapse from day to night or night to day. First off, you can do this in any type of situation, but it works best if you have a single object or point of focus at the center of your frame, because in order to do a moving time lapse, you yourself as a photographer are going to have to move step by step to achieve this. It's going to make your life a lot easier and this process a lot smoother if you have one point of focus that you can maintain throughout your whole walk. This walk that I'm about to explain is easy in concept but harder to execute. So for example, let's start off at Washington Square Park in New York City. What you're going to do is stand either at the beginning or at the front of where you want your sequence to start. And the great thing about hyperlapses is that you can reverse the time, so it doesn't really matter which way you start. But in this instance, I stood in the front right next to the Washington Square Arch. From there, you bring your camera up and you want to make sure that you turn your grids on. The reason that you want your grids on is that if you have a horizontal and vertical center, you're going to be able to align that single point of focus in every single photo that you take. So in my camera here, I have the grids turned on so that I have the interlocking X. And basically what I did is you point that center on a single point of focus on the arch.
And then the center frame that I'm going to be looking at is this eagle thing right there in the middle. It's pretty easy to identify. So if I just keep that in the center on my grid lines, it's just gonna make my frame a lot easier.
You wanna bring your camera up, align the center, and this is the most important step, but you have to make sure that your photo is level and horizontal perfectly, because otherwise once you get into editing and you realize your photos aren't level, it's going to make your hyperlapse look kind of wonky. Take a step back, repeat the process, and to be honest, I don't even bring my camera down when I do this because I'm looking through the viewfinder the entire time. Once again, you take the photo, you take a step back. You take the photo, you take a step back. You're gonna repeat this process as long as you want, but the hard part about hyperlapses is that it requires so many photos in order for you to have even 2, 3, or 5 seconds of footage. The reasoning being that if you have a 24 frames per second timeline, it is going to take you 24 frames or 24 individual photos for you to fill 1 second. So if you do the math, you're essentially going to need 120 photos or 120 steps in order to equal just 5 seconds of footage. But once you have that out of the way, you're just gonna repeat the process like I did here. I even went straight down into the fountain because I wanted to get a seamless walk through the arch. And once again, the biggest thing that's going to make your hyperlapses more smooth is making sure that your photos are level and that you have the same point of focus the entire way. Alright guys, so now let's move over to the editing phase. This is where the magic is going to happen, because you're really going to be able to turn the sequence of images into your hyperlapse. So if you just quickly scroll through them, you can see that honestly my photos weren't as level as they could have been. It's a little bit janky as I move from frame to frame, and I could have done a better job of making sure that each photo was level. But regardless, as I mentioned, this eagle statue right here was what I was aiming my focus towards, so every single photo is going to have that directly in the center. Now all you're going to do is really just apply a filter or preset that you like to make sure that they are consistent throughout all your photos. So in this one, I'm pretty sure I just used a preset of my own. And then you want to make sure that your exposure, your white balance, everything is set, because the way that you're going to do this next is you want to take that single photo that you edited, and then you're going to go all the way down to all the photos that you made. And then in Lightroom, you're going to sync all of them, make sure that all the settings are checked. And once you synchronize them, it's basically going to apply that edit to all your photos to make sure that they have that consistent look. If you want to make your life a little bit easier, you can use this rename too and use a custom sequence, because you can just say arch so that you're able to identify it more easily later in the process. So as you can see here, I have made individual folders for every single hyperlapse that I decided to make while I was in New York. So this is the only step that you actually have to do, or else your project is not going to work. But you want to hit this options right here and then make sure that your image sequence is selected. Essentially what this is going to do is identify all these photos as one sequence, and then it's going to string them together into something like this. It doesn't take long at all to import, and then you drag that on. I'll just say keep existing settings, but you will see that this photo is largely enhanced. So what you're going to do is go to your effect controls and then recompose it so that it fits into the frame, and you can drag it around a little bit and fix it as best as you want. So as you can see, it is a little bit shaky, and it is going to be pretty hardware intensive because there are going to be hundreds of photos that you're going to have to compile at once. But basically what you do next is, once you have your composition set, you're going to right click, you're going to hit nest, and you're going to nest this entire sequence. Basically what nesting is going to do is it's going to allow you to manipulate the video even further. And then you're going to move over to your effects panel, you're going to look up warp stabilizer, and then you're going to wait for it to analyze the entire process. And basically what warp stabilizer is doing is it's taking all the frames of photos that you have, and it's trying to find the best midpoint of every single photo and essentially stabilize your footage, which is why I emphasize so much that the process is going to be much smoother if you take the time and do it correctly in camera, because there's only so much you can do in post-production as well. Warp stabilizer is going to take the most time, but while we're doing that, why don't you guys take a look at what these hyperlapses actually are going to look like. So real quick guys, as I mentioned, you can see here that there are 104 frames, meaning that there were 104 photos taken. If you do the math, it is going to only provide you less than 5 seconds. It's about 4 seconds of footage. So if you want to make a longer hyperlapse, which is a little bit more tedious, it is going to require you to take more photos. Alright guys, so the warp stabilization is complete, and what it's going to do is it's going to crop in your photo a little bit, but that's fine. It's not the best hyperlapse, and I will probably cut out like these few frames and just start it from here so that you get a little bit more of a smoother result. But yeah, it's a really great way to showcase this movement. Basically what I was doing is walking in a straight line as best as I could. In a crowded place like this, it is going to be harder to make sure that your photos are level, but you do your best. So once it is warp stabilized, I recommend that you nest it again. And once you do that, you're going to be able to turn something on if you press Command R and you go into time interpolation. Change this to frame blending, and it's gonna give you a little bit of a motion blur that wasn't previously there. It's a little bit hard to tell right now, but you can see it in the final render. Alright guys, that's going to wrap it up for this tutorial. I really tried to break down this process as best as I could because it is a very cool way to spice up your videos. As you can tell, it is very time intensive, but the results that you get are going to be well worth it. If you enjoyed this tutorial, make sure to drop a like down below. Share your hyperlapses with me on Instagram over at Nicolas Chae. And my final tips are experiment with this as much as you can. I think the more you learn about hyperlapses, you find out what makes them good, what makes them doesn't, and as well as how to put your own spice on things and change it up. That's gonna wrap it up for today's video. I'll see you in the next one. Peace.